Good evening, y'all. How's it going? Rafa the Pickleball Tech Dude here, and welcome to This Week in Pickleball Episode 5, my version of events from the past week and or weeks, and just giving you guys some general updates on what's going on in my world and in the pickleball world in general. This week, we're going to be going over a recap of the Texas Open, including my playing experience, as well as what went on from the pro division side. We're also going to be going over a really helpful tip that I found for my game in a segment called Tip Spotlight, where I sort of talk about some things that I've been seeing on YouTube, including some tips or some clips from other pods or reviews that I found particularly helpful or insightful. I'm also going to be going over a question for you guys, the audience. It's a sort of a section for me to talk about something that I'm thinking about in terms of my testing or what would be helpful for you guys, or just how I'm thinking about how paddles are being tested that I would love your guys' personal input on. And I'll probably just post my favorite responses or sort of ideas that generates in the following weeks. And then we're going to be going over just a general weekly update. This week, we're going to be talking about some updates that are going on with Adidas in particular. And then, of course, we'll finish off with a quick snack break and then going over some gear that just came in, as well as some gear that I've actually been testing since the last pod, which hasn't been a lot, admittedly. And that's a good segue into Texas Open recap, because that's exactly why I haven't been testing a lot of things. So we'll sort of start off with my personal experience. I started off with 3.5 rated singles on Friday. Now, you know, the few of you who realize how long I've been playing this game might wonder why I am playing in 3.5. And the reason is because I don't really play singles like that, to be perfectly honest. I have probably played, you know, less than 10 singles matches in a year and a half, which is probably the last time that I played in a singles tournament. If I remember right, it was October of 2023. It was the last singles tournament I did. It was a 3-0 tournament that I ended up taking, I think, 6th place in. So not even close to a podium finish there, and decided I was feeling confident. I'm sort of reinvigorating my joy for singles. It was my favorite event starting in pickleball, and I'm slowly coming back to it. So I went ahead and signed up for 3-5 singles just to push myself out of my comfort zone. Was playing with some higher than 3-5 level rated players for sure over the week leading up to it, and was feeling confident going in to hopefully at least get close to, if not play in a podium place match, you know, either the gold medal or the bronze medal match. I felt like that was an aspiration that was too far from me. And of course, if for those of you that follow me on Instagram, which if you don't, you definitely should, or if you're not in the Discord, you should definitely be in there as well. The weekend went nothing like I planned. We ended up going 0-2 in singles, dropped my first match 11-8, 11-9, was actually up in that second match, and I just simply fell apart. I think some of it is definitely a stamina issue. I'm not in the best shape that I've ever been in, and I severely underestimated the shape you need to be in to play singles, and so I think that was a big factor. A second factor, and I don't really want to make a lot of excuses in general. There's a lot of things that went on that day. For example, there was a car crash on the highway on the way over that, you know, delayed me nearly 30 to 45 minutes in getting to the venue, which really ate into pretty much all the time that I had reserved to get used to the outside conditions. But I felt like an actual big factor that affected me, as well as many other amateurs, was the wind. Some of you probably saw some headlines about the wind that was going on, but truly, unless you were there, you have no idea what that experience was actually like. In doubles, wind becomes less of a factor. You're relying on two people. You're taking up a lot more court. You know, balls are generally flying in a bit faster. It's a little bit harder for wind to impact you there. But the wind was not only the strongest it was all week on Friday, but it also, there was just a lot of it. And it happened to be singles day. And, you know, I both I both, sort of lost out due to the wind and benefited from the wind, to be perfectly honest. I mean, both me and my opponents were all playing in the same conditions. I had a drive on, off of one shot that was going maybe 6 feet over the net. Then my opponent just let it go, and it fell 3 feet in the baseline. That's the type of wind we were experiencing that day. I think that was a big factor. But on top of the physical stamina, I also think there was just a confidence issue. I do not play a lot of tournaments. I've probably played 3 in the past year or so. So that's something I definitely want to work on. And in general, just being in that position of, it was round 1, I understand, but ever since I was younger, I used to play an instrument for years, and I always get performance anxiety, no matter how much I had practiced, prepared, and was ready for the moment. So I think just putting myself in more tournament scenarios and just, playing against players that are better than me in those scenarios is what's really going to sort of improve my my mental game there, which I think is a huge deal. So singles obviously didn't go as expected. I dropped that first game. Probably shouldn't have, to be honest. It was somebody that was definitely beatable. And then my first backdraw match, which the first match was 2 games best of 3 because there was a big draw. Second and backdraw matches were all games to 15. Lost that backdraw match 4-15. That was just against somebody that definitely outplayed me. If I'm being honest, it was, ex-tennis, ex-badminton player, somebody who definitely should have beat me and could have maybe made a run in the 4-0 bracket, to be honest, but their duper doesn't reflect that. And of course, they also mentioned that they weren't, I talked to them after the match, and they weren't somebody who played a lot of singles either. So I think we were both just in a similar spot, and they just happened to be just a better player. And so for all I know, that means that my skill set aligns more with a 3-0 in singles than it does with a 3-5, or it could mean that they are better than a 3-5. But, we will never know. Duper is a flawed system, but it's the best that we've got. So just with regards to singles was not what we were hoping for, but I do plan on practicing and getting better there. And then when it comes to mixed doubles was the only other event that I played. That was on Sunday. It was still a little bit windy that day, but definitely was not as bad. That went okay. We did sing. I ended up doing 4-0 mixed because I do believe that I am better at doubles than I am at singles. And if anything, my record proves that. I did go 1-2 in mixed doubles. And that was a little bit more, that was a little bit more of an enjoyable experience. I really just, especially, match 1, we lost our first main draw match, but we took the first game 11-6, and then we ended up losing. I think it was along the lines of 4-11, like 4-7, something like that. To be honest, there was we felt really confident going into match 2. I think that there was certainly a side advantage that day. And but, when it comes down to game 3, I think that's why the score was a little bit closer. But yeah, they just definitely me and my partner got in our heads a little bit. In that third match, it was never particularly close. Like, I think we were down maybe 6-1 at the, on the side change. And then we just sort of never really, we made a small run, but just never fully got the momentum back. There was there's a lot of just like tiny, there weren't a lot of mistakes, honestly, in that first game, but there was, the person that we were playing against, or the man at least, was using what sounded like a very, very hollow mod TA 15. So that was definitely interesting. But, generally speaking, broken down paddles especially mods, are really hard to control, but this guy actually really wielded that paddle well. And in the end, that paddle is legal, and it will stay legal for, more months to come. So it is something that I would expect to see again in the future. And just wasn't in the cards there. They definitely, we didn't feed the ball enough to the right player, I think. And yeah, it was just, we just straight up got beat there. But when it came to the second match, that was really, really interesting. It's probably one of the more interesting matches I've ever played. It was more of a, The female on the other team was very visibly pregnant. And that really got in my head personally. I don't really think it affected my partner that much, but it was definitely in my head a lot of the time, just because that's the player right in front of me. And I really love my forehand flick from the left side, especially on like a high cross court dink. And so, obviously, I'm not really sure if there is any type of damage that can be caused to a baby by getting hit by a pickleball, especially, I'm not necessarily driving the ball that hard. Flicks at the net, they're probably coming off, 30, 40 miles per hour off the face and then hitting a little bit softer than that. But just speaking from experience of, speeding up and hitting people in the face before, it's not something that cause damage, but it definitely leaves marks. And so, yeah, the thought of doing that to somebody who was pregnant, especially because the sort of body area is where I tend to bag people with that shot, was just really kind of messing with me a bit. We did pull that match off, though. We went up 14-6. This wasn't a team that was, I think particularly on our level. But again, at that 14 mark, we slowly started to let them back in and started getting in our own heads and unable to finish the point. And unfortunately, we let them come back 14-13. And to win the match, I had a nice high sort of pop-up right here. And when I came to hit it, I hit it late. And it ended up hitting the guy square between the eyes. If it hadn't hit him, it was probably going out. And I think the wind honestly just pushed it a little bit faster onto my paddle than I was expecting. It's one of the very rare situations I felt like the wind was to blame for, either one of us missing a shot. But, in the end, we do win that point, and it was, obviously it felt very bad. It's kind of like a demoralizing way to lose a match, just getting hit in the head by a ball. But you take your wins where you can, I guess. So that was a good match to win. Nice to overcome a couple of factors there. And then in the third match, we actually ended up facing off against Brian Fitzpatrick, who, if you guys don't know, is actually the creator of the Graffiti machine that myself and pretty much every other, mainstream reviewer is using to test swing weight on paddles and twist weight as well. Very useful device. Brian's a great guy. Hadn't met his daughter until the evening prior. We were all at a chorus, was not a chorus event, but rather an event that was organized by Matt Cox, the founder of Chorus. I was there. Justin Barton from Pickleball, etc. was there. We had Lewis from Pickleball Pursuit. John Williams from John Q was in town. We also had, and Brian was there, and a couple of others, some people. Lewis brought his wife and one of his buddies who he was playing in Texas Open with. It was a great time. So sidetracking here a bit, but that was a really fun event. Got to test some of the Prelude paddles that Chorus is going to be giving away for their first birthday here on March 20th, which is actually tomorrow. So any order that you are placing for a Chorus paddle comes with the free Prelude. I believe that's a tomorrow exclusive only. So make sure, if you are looking to buy a Chorus paddle, I have a few reviews up on my channel, as do other reviewers. So make sure you go check those out. If you use my code Rafa, it gets you 10% off the order as well. But those Prelude paddles, some of them are pretty sick. You might have seen myself and a couple of other reviewers posting pictures of them. They're sort of the funky looking color really just colors and shapes to currently existing Chorus paddles. And there was one in particular that I'm not sure how much I can speak about on it, but from what I understand from Matt, it is somewhat similar to a paddle that will be coming out soon to replace the Fire paddles when they get sunset in July. And they're pretty good. Like, I think just by far that paddle for myself and the rest of us was really standing out. So I'm excited to see what comes of that. We all also got to meet I believe his name is Doc Martin from Whiskey Dink, who also does reviews, and he on Instagram, and he sort of pairs paddles with whiskey, which is kind of a fun concept. So shout out to Doc as well. It's just a cool event just to like hang out. But fast forwarding now, it's sort of it was interesting. I never actually played against Brian and his daughter during that event, which was over at the Pickler in McKinney. Great venue, by the way. My first time there. But now had to face them in an actual bracket match. They ended up beating me and my partner pretty handily. I think the score was 15-6, 15-7, or something like that. To be honest, me and my partner were just not gelling in that third match. There was a lot of there's a little bit of miscommunication, a lot more unforced errors than were happening in the first two matches. In general, we were just not in sync, and so we ended up dropping that one. I think, again, huge credit to Brian, and his daughter's name is Emily. Huge shout out, Brian and Emily. They are great players. But yeah, definitely would have thought if we had faced them first match, in my opinion, I think it could have been at least closer. But yeah, no, that was it was a sad way to go out, but I felt like we, especially in the first two matches, we just didn't really leave a lot on the table. We really sort of played our best pickleball, and so it's tough to go out that way. But I went into the entire event with not super not low expectations, but I rather go into something and without the pressure of thinking that I should win, I should podium rather than not, and then being surprised when it happens. So I think it was just, we had a good run of it. It was my first tournament with this partner as well. So I think there could be more to come. There's more sort of, definitely there needs to be like more chemistry generated there to do with your partner, especially to do better in those big events. And yeah, could definitely see that happening. So I think it was a nice solid foundation to get that win. And then, we'll just see where everything goes from there. So it should be fun, but not a great showing from a personal perspective at the Texas Open, but the good news is I did get to enjoy the rest of the event. I got to see lots of friends compete in their own divisions. And I also got to catch some of the pro matches, which that was really sick as well. I think this was a wild weekend in terms of a lot of upsets, a lot of seeing a lot of new people on Championship Sunday. I think, for example, talking singles, I think Christian Alshon is becoming a staple in men's singles. He's been there the last two Sundays. He's at least getting to, quarters or semis for the past several tournaments, which I think is nuts. And I think, that is, that's like massive improvement for what he was doing before. It's good to see Fed back on Championship Sunday and men's singles as well. But thinking about women's doubles, this is the first tournament where Catherine Parento and Annalie Waters didn't even make semis in a pro tournament, which is absolutely nuts considering their record. So not seeing them on Championship Sunday, but rather seeing a really good match between Tyra and Paris, and then Callie Jo and Etta. I keep reminding myself to learn how to pronounce her last name because it's not Etta Wright anymore, but I just haven't gotten around to it. But seeing both of those two play on Championship Sunday was nice and refreshing. It was good to see, good new competition. And of course, Tyra and Paris, I think, if I had to choose a team to have won that match, Tyra and Paris are just playing out of their minds, especially in the recent few weeks. So I'm not surprised that they took gold there. The men's match was also really fun. See, that match went all the way to 5. And I think that, I'm starting to enjoy seeing men's doubles again. I think the PPA Tour sort of fell into this lull in the past where it was just obviously Ben and Colin making it to the finals, and then Ben and Colin winning the finals. They sort of started weaning away from it when Ben and Colin started making less finals. And then now all of a sudden we've gotten to a stage where Ben, who is not a very emotional player on the court, is starting to actually show more emotion and passion and kind of desire to win, which I felt like we sort of were losing out on before. I know Ben is the greatest player of all time. I don't think anybody would dispute that, but it's more fun when you see a player that's really invested in winning the match, which I felt like it was getting a little too easy for Ben before. It was getting a little bit too comfortable. The lack of emotion was just because he wasn't surprised at what was happening, which was just him winning everything. So the fact that, we saw that really big reaction from him, especially when Gabe went and won them the match point there at the end of that match in 5 games, I think is just a testament to how much better competition in pickleball is getting, especially on the pro side. And then, again, it's in the long run, I think it's good for us as viewers because I'm more excited to watch these matches that are closer, a little bit longer, more competitive, and are just, where even the best players have to go a little bit more all out or be a little bit more emotionally invested to win the game. So I think that's really cool to see. But yeah, I think outside of that, in general, got to, sort of hang out with John and Justin, and Lewis and, the people that they brought, to play with them at the Texas Open. Always good to just kind of, reconnect with them, as buddies and as, fellow reviewers. It's never hurts to just sort of, get together and chat for a bit. And yeah, it was really great sort of having them in town, having a lot of other people in town. Next time that I'll see them is probably in a couple of weeks here, which I will talk about in a moment. Don't get too ahead of me. But yeah, it was really cool. And also, big shout out to everybody who came up, recognized me and said hi to me at the event. That's really cool. I had a couple of people even message me after the fact saying like, oh, I thought I saw you, but I didn't like go up to you or anything. Never be that way. Don't be afraid to come up and say hi to me. I'm never too busy. I'm not gonna like turn you away or be a dick or something unless I'm like in a really bad mood. Coming up to me right after I've lost a match, similar to anybody else who's playing is maybe not the best time, but literally outside of that, there's a 2% chance you ever catch me in that scenario. So definitely come up, say hi to me. If you want to, if you want to chat for a moment, I'll always make the time. I don't, but it's really, it's cool. It's cool to see, people out here, you guys actually, seeing my content and, feeling confident enough to come up and say hi, or at least, let me know that you wanted to. But definitely, yeah, I keep doing that. I love meeting you guys. I love chatting, whether it's about paddles or about, your thoughts on anything that I've discussed recently. I love all that stuff. So keep it coming for sure. All right. I think that sort of wraps up Texas Open. So let's chat a little bit now. Let's chat about my tip spotlight. What I was seeing on YouTube again. That was really that's sort of had me take a step up in one aspect of my game. Keeping in line with what I was talking about in the TXO recap, which is just that I really just need to up the skill level a little bit. Thought I'd quickly share. I think it's kind of interesting for you guys to see the YouTubers that YouTubers watch. What content are we consuming as opposed to just, everybody else. And one video that I came across that actually really helped one aspect of my game was from Josh J Pickleball. For those of you who don't know Josh, he's a Yola sponsored player. He does a lot of tips and tutorials, and occasionally with help from the Johns brothers, whom he's good friends with. Shout out to Josh. If you ever see one of his videos, also the editor on some of those videos is, in fact, Austin Kim, who is the product manager at Yola that I recently released an interview on, or interview with, I should say. So shout out to Josh and Austin. But there was a recent video that Josh did about the third shot drive where him and Ben were helping correct the third shot drive from sort of a raw tennis player type attribute person coming into pickleball. And the one thing in particular that Ben talked about in that video that really sort of reshaped how I thought about hitting drives as somebody who has zero racket sports background was hitting the outside third of the ball on the drive. For a long time, I really struggled with sort of my grip orientation and how that led to me really just skying balls like super high over the net. And really high drives are bad for two reasons. They either your opponent's either skilled enough to let them go out, or they're so high that your opponent can just hit a really sharp angle off of them. Neither of which is good at all. So what I noticed here was Ben made a comment about hitting the outside third of the ball, and then how that allows you to keep your paddle face a little bit more closed on the contact, and then be able to, as long as you do a strong low to high motion, keep the paddle face closed and hit the outside third of the ball, that is sort of the key to keeping drives low. If you watch a lot of Ben's drives himself, there aren't many times he's hitting a drive that, somebody leaves out, which means that it's either low enough to look like it's staying in, or it's low enough because it is staying in. And it's really, really hard to have the level of consistency that he does with those shots. But what I noticed was that once I switched my grip from a continental to more of a semi-Western grip at the baseline, really just in order to keep that paddle face, instead of, going like this, to go in like this a little bit more. This is when we say open, this is open, a little bit more flat. And then this is closed, right? Just so that you're brushing over the ball in a closed sort of paddle position. Keeping the paddle face more closed, doing the low to high motion, and then really looking at the ball, catching it at its apex and segmenting it into thirds and trying to smack it on the sort of outside third of it. That did a lot for my drives. Not only were they staying lower, but I was also felt like I was generating more topspin in order to keep those balls in. Now, it's something that I'm still working on, and probably something that I'll, post clips on as it hopefully continues to get better there. But I'm going to link that video here. But if you haven't seen that video and you struggle with your drives, there's other tip videos that I've watched in the past, and from, the biggest content creators out there. And I think this is one that really sort of, in a very, very concrete motion, like sort of step-by-step process, said, take this, take components 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is how you keep the drives low. And it actually worked. And coming from me as somebody who is, I would consider a little bit more coachable because I don't have any, habits from any other racket sports. So, but at the same time, it's difficult to figure out who to listen to in terms of tips. And I think that Josh and his team are going to be doing some really good stuff moving forward. Okay, so now let's go ahead and jump into my question for you guys for this week. Okie dokie. So let's chat. Something that sort of came up as I was making my C45 review was I realized that a number of people were talking about this paddle being plush. And in all honesty, I don't quite see it the same way. This sort of where this question or idea for this segment comes from, just for this week. And so what I really started thinking about is this concept of dwell, right? There's been a lot of discussion about, dwell time on paddles, how that is used to impact spin and things of that nature. And so what I think is happening a lot in terms this is just more so to help you guys sort of understand what you should be thinking of when you are watching different reviews. But dwell really just means that the ball, how long is the ball really sitting on the face for? I think that there's a lot of ways to achieve dwell in a paddle, but ultimately needs to have a face that is flexible enough to allow the ball to sort of dwell on it and sort of stay, as opposed to popping off super quickly. I think that dwell is the right term to be using when a ball sort of stays on the face a bit longer than a lot of other paddles out there. There's a lot of really stiff paddles on the market, like the Paddle Techs. Are the first ones that come to mind. SELKIRK Power Airs, things of that nature that are just, super really high on the pop scale, but very low on the dwell time. There's a lot more companies introducing ways to provide, higher dwell times on their paddles these days. I think dwell has a lot to do with the construction type of, the core internals. I think the reason the Gen 3s are able in particular to sort of achieve more dwell is by being able to, construct their cores to be more flexible. So having that flex is something that I would consider synonymous with dwell. So you see, right now we have two different types of, more popular, I would say, Gen 3 power paddle styles, right? Being the diving board style with the foam channel going just in the upper hemisphere of the paddle. We've seen that on the Yola paddles. We've seen this on the Proton Flamingo. We've seen this on the C45, the Zeus Rev, and a couple of others. And then there is the floating core style, which we see this on the 11624 power paddles, and we see this on the Honolulu J2K Plus, for example. And these are just different ways to allow your paddle face to flex more and achieve that higher dwell time of the ball on the face. I think that saying that all of those paddles have high dwell is not something that I would argue against. What I will push back against is that I think that some of those paddles achieved well in a way that is plush, and then others achieved well in a way that I would consider to be a bit more trampoline-like. And this is essentially what I mean. When I think about a plush paddle face, and I listed a few of those paddles in my C45 review, but I'm really thinking about a paddle that can actually grab and hold the ball and then launch it off. I'm really thinking about something that really pushes into the face, something that sits there momentarily and then launches off. Now, of course, the entire process happens super quickly, but it's a feeling that translates to your hand. It's something that you can really, especially, let's take, for example, the classic, J2K course shapeshifter debate of what was the best all-court paddle from 2024. One of the main things that made those paddles so good is that there is super high levels of plushness to those faces. You really feel the ball sink in, and then it essentially launches off. It is flung off the face, and that's what I would consider a plush paddle, is something where you feel that sensation. When I think about, I introduced that term just now, trampoline, right? The reason trampoline comes to mind for other types of paddles with high dwell is because these paddles, you feel the ball go into the face, but it is a lot more instantaneous, a lot more sort of momentary. And three paddles that come to my mind when I think about this feeling are the Proton Flamingo, the Gen 3S paddles from Yola, as well as the C45. So these are paddles that people are describing as plush, when in reality, what I personally feel when the ball sits on the face is that it does so very quickly, very momentarily. I feel it enough to where the ball does feel like it is going into the face much more than the more rigid paddles that I was listing earlier. However, you momentarily get that sensation before the ball launches off. It is part of what makes the C45 and the Flamingo and the 3S such poppy paddles. A little bit more poppy on the 3S, depending on, of course, what core thickness you're using, but I digress. I really feel like there needs to be a distinction there because when I describe a paddle to you as plush, I really want it to sort of be synonymous with forgiving, something that really sinks into the face, feels like the sweet spot is really sort of forgiving and sort of, you feel the ball sinking in towards the edges of that sweet spot area. And that is what I would consider a plush face. Versus something with a more trampoline type dwell is something that, again, a ball is going to sink in, but is going to rocket off very quickly. Very similar to how when you bounce on a trampoline, you sort of bounce super quickly back off the top. Again, it all depends on the tension and the size of the trampoline, et cetera, but you guys sort of understand where I'm coming from. There may need to be a different term for this, but essentially, what I'm wondering from you guys is essentially, does that make sense? Does it make sense, or is there a different term that I could be using to communicate a paddle that still has dwell, but it is not plush dwell? It is more, stringent dwell, tight dwell, tight dwell might be a better, that's more descriptive in my head of what I'm trying to describe, but just a paddle where the ball does sink in, but it rockets off a lot faster. So it doesn't necessarily come off as a paddle that is super plush or forgiving, but rather one where the ball simply just sinks in a little bit more and uses that to generate more spin and more power. So you guys let me know what you think. Does my train of thought make sense? And do you think that there is a better term to be using to describe that? I'll continue to use that moving forward, depending on your guys' feedback. But yeah, that's sort of my question for the audience. My question for you guys, my pickleball text this week. I need your help. But yeah, so now we can move forward from here just into the last couple of segments here for this pod. Ooh, wait a second. You thought that I was just going to forget about snack break? I don't think so. Let's go ahead. What we have this week is, for many of you that don't know, Steven over at STS Pickleball, who also does a lot of paddle reviews. If you guys aren't following him, definitely do that. But his full-time job is as a chocolatier. He owns a chocolate company called Stone Grinds, which is a small batch chocolate company out in Arizona. So if you guys are ever see these products in store, definitely check them out. So what I'm going to be doing is live trying a few of these pieces, a few of these flavors that are more staple for his company that I ordered. So we're going to start off with a bourbon dark cherry chocolate, and I'm going to show the boxes for the other two. I lost the box for this bar somehow. I literally just have a naked bar down here on my table. If I can find the box, like a picture of it online, or if I find it around my house, I'll show it here. But this is sort of, they come in the tiny little, break-offable squares. This one looks like it's got some nuts in it, and it also has a nice little sort of cherry there here on the back here. So here's the live reaction. Okay. Oh. Okay. Okay. All right. I didn't know you were like that, Steven. Okay. That's really good. So it's interesting. It's not a super flavorful sort of piece in the beginning, but the more you chew it, the more you get the chocolate flavor. And then, of course, the more you get the cherry flavor. And that cherry flavor is what really makes that bar, personally, in my opinion. That is nuts. I believe this is like 75% cacao or something like that. So these are all going to be dark chocolates, by the way. Steven knows his stuff. He's not going to do no milk chocolate. This ain't Hershey's, okay? If you like cheap chocolate, this is not for you. But that was pretty darn good. It's just super neutral in the beginning, and then it slowly starts to embrace that bourbon cherry flavor, which I mean, cherry and chocolate, classic combo. That was really freaking good. I'm not gonna lie. All right, so now let's get to the stuff that I actually have the boxes for. Let's go with the almond butter and black lava salt. Now, this one I'm excited for. This is the highest sort of dark chocolate percentage of cacao that I have here. It's 80%. From what I understand, the best way to enjoy dark chocolate is to let it sit on your tongue and not chew it, and then just sort of let it melt on your tongue. And then following that, once you start chewing, it actually releases more sweet notes. So I'm going to try that with this one. This one looks pretty plain, just optically. It has they have their little llama logo on it. If you can't see it, you probably can't see it from this far. But there's nothing else on it. So let's see. Okay, it's already melted. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's exactly what it says it is. I mean, it is the higher percentage of dark chocolate than the last one. I don't personally think it makes that much of a difference. It's not bitter really at all. And then I think I said part of the trick is to let it sort of melt on the tongue there, perhaps. But you do get the almond butter notes, and then the whole thing, chocolate in general, is just elevated by salt, in my opinion. If you ever even make or have like a cup of chocolate milk, throw some salt in there and let me know. Let me know if that changes anything. I think it does. Um, but yeah, the fact that you get the salty notes, it sort of takes the almond butter and takes the chocolate and just sort of intensifies it a little bit, intensifies the sweetness just a little bit more. But it's still not an overly sweet chocolate, and it almost it tastes like an elevated, I don't know, just like a super like silky and smooth and sort of elevated, bright chocolate flavor. And I love that. I think I like that more than the bourbon cherry, because the cherry, that bar is more like classic cherry, classic chocolate, bam. That is just like intense, like silky smooth chocolate, which I am personally. I said earlier, if you're a fan of cheap milk chocolate, this isn't for you. I am also a fan of cheap milk chocolate. I love Hershey's. I love like the little Lindt chocolate truffles and all that stuff, but that's really good. That is like, I would take that any day over those. And this is sort of like gives me the same experience, but just better texture, better flavor, just overall. I love that flavor. All right. Lastly, we're going to finish with the cappuccino flavor. Now, this is the least dark. This is 55%. It has it as a International Chocolate Awards America's 2020 and 2021 gold medal winner, as well as a Good Food Awards winner in 2018. Now, if any of you are in the food industry, you may know more than me about how prestigious those awards are, but I'm sure they have to be if they're on the box. I'm a very big coffee person. I love tiramisu. I love anything that is coffee flavored. So this should be a good experience. This looks optically very similar to the last one, the almond butter and black lava salt. Again, just pretty plain, but let's go ahead and see. Oh my God. Oh my God. That's really good. Go buy this, honestly. Like, go buy this right now. If you love coffee and chocolate, this is probably one of the better coffee flavored chocolate desserts I've ever had. That is nuts. Whoa. The coffee is so forward and intense. You really get, I think it's espresso in particular. Yeah, it says notes of espresso, caramel macchiato. I really don't get the caramel macchiato part, but that espresso, that is right there, tip of the tongue, very immediate, after you start chewing. And God, that is good. Oh my gosh. Dude, I'm not, wow. I love this segment. I'm not, there's very few things I feel like that can top that. Like, I'm a huge chocolate person, I'm a big coffee person, and that is just a marriage of both worlds. Like, after this, I might get on my phone and place another order for some of this stuff, because that is so, so good. I think if you want to support, small business, want to get, and you have a nice sweet tooth just like me, minimum go grab that cappuccino flavor. They do seasonal flavors from what I understand that sell out pretty quickly, but that cappuccino is just, that's next level. That just stole the show for me. I'm so happy I did that one last. Damn. All right, really quickly before I get into paddle tech for this week. want to talk about Adidas really quick. So I just briefly acknowledged it in the last pod, and I mentioned that there really was a lot that I couldn't talk about just yet. But we finally got an update. Myself and several other reviewers have gotten the official notice. There will be a launch event for the new Adidas paddles. Can't speak a lot about the details of what the paddles will be, even though I do know some of those details. But what I can say is that this event will be happening. It will be happening in the second week of April, probably the beginning of that second week. So if you are in the Austin area, which is when that event will be happening, I'm not particularly sure where it's going to be happening, if they have some sort of venue rented out, or if it's going to be happening at, like one of the prominent paddle clubs over there, which I think would make a lot of sense so that we could test the paddles on site, similar to what we did at the YOLA event. But that is going to be happening. There is going to be, so, if you live in the Austin area, just know there's going to be an influx of paddle nerds in your area very soon. So I'm excited to bring you guys more info and more details when that does come about, which now you have a target date. That event's going to be happening on the 8th of April in particular. So be there the 7th through the 9th at least in Austin. Maybe I'll stick around for a little bit before or after. And yeah, so look forward to that second week of April there. And we're going to know about the paddle that, Fed in particular, Fed, Rafa Hewitt, Mari Humberg, etc., are going to actually be playing with moving forward. All right, so we're going to start this segment off with just the things that I have gotten but haven't actually had a chance to play test. Honestly, a lot of this stuff arrived here within the last 2 days, and so really haven't had time to get out and play with it. I've been taking a little bit of a rest, taking my foot off the pedal since Texas Open, just to sort of give myself some rest here. But let's go ahead. The first packet, excuse me, geez, that Stone Grinds chocolate. But let's go ahead and get into the first package here. This one is from Gherkin, and I've been seeing some pictures of it around socials. So let's go ahead and see what we've got here real quick. Is this? Wait a second. Nah, this is crazy. This is crazy. Can you guys see that? That is so cool. I love this. I love this. You know what? I don't have a choice, do I? My hair's probably a mess right now. Oh yeah. Dude, that's the stuff. I don't care if it casts a shadow on my face or something. It might, for all I know. I don't think it is right now, but this is sick. This is sick. I'm gonna have to wear this in reviews moving forward. This is so sick. Thanks, Gherkin, for this. Now let's look at the paddles that actually came out of this box here. There are a couple. So the first one here looks like we're finally looking at the Nightshade. Now I know that I'm pretty sure Kyle Dink Smash Media already said that this is his main paddle moving forward for this month at least. This is the first time that I'm actually getting my hands on him. I've seen the design already. The design is a little bit much for me, to be honest. There's a lot of things going around. Also, I understand that this letter here on the bottom, this is to indicate that this is an elongated versus I think this one is going to be a standard, unless I'm wrong. I'm never wrong. This is a standard. What I think is also kind of interesting is you can tell that this was the Spectre shape because it still has a green band on it. And this was the Quantum shape, if I remember right. I probably don't, but this was that shape because it still has that blue band on it. So they're keeping the same shapes, it looks like, from the original drop, but now we have the Nightshade. So this is going to be cool. I'm excited to test this out. Other than the design, the face looks really gritty, but I actually do dig the sort of gradient edge guards here. So these look fun. I'm excited to try these out. I didn't think this far out where I'm actually going to put these down once I'm done. Normally I have the whole stack on one side and then of what I'm talking about, and then the other side is where I just stack them up, but we'll just put these there for now. The third thing that came through here, this is sick also. This is the the G-Spot trainer. I've never been a big fan of trainer paddles. I'm not going to lie. I've always despised the idea of trainer paddles just because it's not a real paddle. I don't understand how you can really create the experience of hitting with a real paddle in the sweet spot with this paddle. Just the handle is so incredibly long, and and because all you need is the sweet spot area. But now that I have one, I've had a couple of others. I had the one from Thrive for a little while. I don't think I actually hit it, but I think I owe it to them. I owe it for the paddle inspector hat. I will hit this one. I'll at least hit it and give you guys my thoughts and see if it backs up what I think about trainer paddles, which I think it will. But we'll give it a shot for a game or two. Second paddle that came through here. This is exciting. This is the Yola Hyperion 16mm Pro 4. Now, this is something that I've been a little excited about. I don't particularly remember hitting the Hyperion at the Yola event. I spent a lot of time on the Perseus, on the Agassi, and on the Scorpius shapes. But the Hyperion, I don't quite remember that well. I think from the past, I recall feeling I recall feeling really well about the Perseus 14 over the 16, as well as the Agassi 14 over the 16, and similar to the Scorpius. But this Hyperion shape, if I remember right, I did prefer the 16 over the 14 for some weird reason. So when the 14 comes through, we'll of course do that comparison. This paddle is supposed to be launching in April, and I do believe, from what I was told, I was thinking about how this is the Ben Johns Hyperion, and it is blue. Normally Simone's Hyperion is blue and Ben's is green. So I've been wondering why the switch in color. From what I understand, every single paddle shape is going to have its own color. So all of the Perseus will be red, all of the Hyperions will be blue, all the Scorpius will be their own color. So yeah, we'll see if that's true when they ultimately come through, but that's what I've been told. So we'll run the numbers on this. We'll start playing with this, and I'll give you guys some thoughts next week. Ooh, okay. So this paddle I've been trying to get my hands on for a while. We've got the marked. I'm already screwing it up. The unmarked alpha from Mark Pickleball. Now, this paddle was so hard for me to get my hands on because this was sent to me a super long time ago, and I was talking with Wesley, who owns Mark, and the paddle just got lost in the mail. Like, all of a sudden, it was where Mark is based, and then it got moved one time, and then it just disappeared, and now it just will forever say that it is on its way but late from USPS. So gotta love the old US postal system. But now do have my hands here on the unmarked alpha. This is something that's been getting a little bit of buzz, so I'm excited to try this one. Really, again, this is a really tasteful take on the sort of gradient edge guard, which I made an Instagram post a couple of weeks ago talking about how one paddle had done really well with their gradient edge guard, and I think a lot of other companies, of course, not based on seeing that post, but just in general, I think it was a trend that I saw coming. And yeah, glad to see that I was right about it, because I do like these gradients. The face is very gritty. Of the Hyperion, and the Hyperion was the least gritty right now, and that's because that's the dual approved version. So the UPA only will be more gritty, but the Nightshade was a little bit more gritty. This is one of the more gritty faces that I recall feeling in recent memory. So this paddle is USA Pickleball approved. It also has a PB Core 43 certified stamp on it. I think that this will be interesting. That's gritty. I'm always shocked at the variance in grit that I see from paddle to paddle, especially when it's USAP approved, because they are the most stringent when it comes to this. But yeah, if it works and it's legal, which it seems to be, then it works. So I'm curious to see if anybody else has this paddle. Let me know how gritty yours is in the comments. They sent me a second one to cut open for you guys, so thank you for doing that. I appreciate when companies are able to do that. It's a privilege in general to get, to have these paddles sent to me, and being able to test them and bring them to you guys. And I never undervalue that, whether I like a paddle or I don't. But going a little bit of the extra mile there in order to, let me do my job a bit more thoroughly. It never hurts, and it's always appreciated. Now this paddle, I don't think I can show you guys this one. I'm not going to. I'm just going to err on the side of caution. I'm not going to do it. Sorry, I can't. But I have a paddle from Mavericks. Now, I guess what you guys should know is that Mavericks is working on stuff. They are still working behind the scenes and still working to bring stuff. I have considered, I re-hit the Pro X paddle recently, which I think is right. Am I pointing to the right side? Yeah, it's like right here, I think, on my wall. I considered switching back to it for doubles in particular, just because I think in order to improve my confidence, I need to be playing with a paddle where there is a little bit more room for error, which the vast majority of paddles out there aren't. So I may move away from the Spartus Olympus, but we'll see. Only time will tell. And this paddle is sort of part of what they are exploring, and they are including some of us reviewers in that process to sort of explore potentially what direction they should go in. So I already see some pretty noticeable differences from the other paddles that they've been releasing. So this will be cool to sort of provide them feedback on, and it'll be interesting if they bring this to the market. So we'll see what goes on with that. But sorry, I can't show or say more on that. All right, and the last thing here that just came through was Revelin. Revelin is coming out with their Bioflix Plus paddles soon. I bounced a ball on these faces just before I came in here, and this feels like a Gen 3. Shout out to Todd Storch. He is a local community member of mine and now owns Revelin. So shout out to Todd for getting me these. Todd also is the one who took the pictures that you might have seen earlier of me playing singles at the Texas Open. So Todd's a great guy. Revelin is not a company that I've been involved with a lot with, to be honest, but I'm excited. They sent me some samples of what the faces actually look like pre-processing on these paddles. So it's these are ones that I can explore a lot more deeply and have a lot more questions on. I believe they're going to have this reach shape as well as this pure shape, which is more of a standard shape. This is the drift, looks more of an elongated. I'll have to measure and see whether it's elongated or hybrid, but the pure is definitely more of a standard shape. It does not look wide body to me. So we're going to, and it looks like the pure is, or rather the reach is red, has this red R here, and red Revelin, and the pure is yellow. So these feel good. The handles feel a bit stocky, a little bit, maybe some exposed polymer here on the edges, but you know what? These are going to be interesting to try. Oh, look at that. The pure handle, a lot lower than the reach handle. We'll see. We'll see which one I like more, but I think these are promising. These are both 60 millimeter paddles, so we'll see how those goes. All right, so that's it for everything that I just got and haven't hit yet. Now let's get into the stuff that I have hit, and I'll provide some quick thoughts here to wrap us up. All right, y'all, let's do it. Let's finish off with these, with thoughts on a few paddles here. So I'm not late to the party on testing these, but I am late to the party on talking about them. I'm talking, of course, about the Project 008s from SELKIRK. Now, there is a very deliberate reason why I'm late to the party on these. I remember on the bus in Vegas during the YOLA event, was talking with a couple of the guys, and there is an anecdote that Chris from Pickleball Studio said, which was that his 008s played very soft, but when he mentioned this to a SELKIRK sponsored pro actually, don't quote me, maybe it was not a pro, may have just been somebody else in the community, but their paddle played a lot hotter and played more like a standard power Gen 3. And he confirmed this by hitting with their paddle. So I have been slowly getting the 008s over time in different shapes, in different thicknesses. Right now I just have the 13 millimeter Tour and Invicta shapes, as well as a 16 millimeter Tour. So the 10 millimeters, I believe, were going to be coming soon. And then the last 13 millimeter shape, I have no idea. So we'll find out. But I mean, the difference between the paddles in terms of feel, even between the shapes, is not very high. It's really just a difference in swing weight and balance point, really. But they're solid foam all the way through, so the feel doesn't really change that much paddle to paddle. I will say that the reason why I was holding off was because I was trying to see if this would happen to me, and I think it has. So I've hit this Tour 13 millimeter. I've had it for a while. I got the Tour 13 and 16 millimeter a while back. So I've hit these. These feel these feel nice to me. I like the, again, you're getting to revisit the topic from earlier, more of a plush dwell feeling, in my opinion. Ball really does sink in. Doesn't come off with a lot of power. It's funny. I think that SELKIRK is always due to come out with a control paddle, I should say, a control paddle of the year candidate in the first or second quarter of the year, and then completely ghost the rest of the year. So I think this could honestly be up that alley. I think if you were looking for a very solid control paddle, then this 008, I don't recall the price. That's one thing. It's probably in the 300s. I don't think that's I don't think that's an unfair guess. So is it worth in the 300s? Probably not. But I think if you were looking for, if budget wasn't a factor and you were looking to me to recommend a control paddle from this year, it'd be the 008 so far. This paddle is very, very, very good for control. Feels very nice. Not a lot of dead spots. Doesn't need too much weight customization. The tour shape in particular is very fast in the hands. Not very fast, but, quicker than most other paddles. Can't say the same for the Invicta, but it's that Tour 008. The 16 millimeter to me is a little bit too soft. The 13 is like perfect. Like that's where I would want a control paddle to be. So I'm really loving that paddle from a control perspective, probably not from a price perspective. The 008 Invicta. Now I hit this paddle just twice, and this paddle already feels more powerful than the 13 millimeter Tour. And I don't think it's just due to the shape. I do feel the balance point shifted up a bit higher here, and I haven't quite run the stats on swing weight, but this paddle feels more all court oriented. And I don't know if these paddles have a break-in. I doubt that they do because it's full foam and it's a similar situation to what we had with the Carbon True foams. But this paddle does feel hotter, like for sure it does. Even the sound is different. There's more of a crack to this one than there's more of like a thud on the Tour 008 13. So this is interesting. I'm going to have to hit this a bit more in order to give you guys a true sort of comparison. But again, very similar feeling, very similar, nice dwell time, not a lot of dead spots, so really good size sweet spot. Twist weight is not an issue, in particular on the Invicta. On the Tour, I do a little bit of weight on the 3 and 9 to improve it there. But this is definitely, it's still, again, more all court oriented. It's not power, but the thing is that the 008 Tour 13 millimeter is square in control, and the 16 millimeter is like high, like very low end, definitely on the control side. This 008 Invicta feels more powerful. So I don't know if it's a manufacturing thing, or I don't know if it's something that is coming along with the batches, because I got this paddle way later than I got the other two. So we're going to have to see. But I'll provide more thoughts on this soon, and may get some clarification from SELKIRK on if anything has been changing from batch to batch. All right. Now let's talk GEARBOX. So first, we're looking at the Pro Ultimate Power Elongated. This is meant to replace the Pro Power Elongated, not the Pro Ultimate Power. The nomenclature is starting to get in my head a little bit, especially with this series. I would have liked the names to be a little bit more obvious. I think Pro Ultimate and Pro Power, Pro Control, that is probably enough. I guess more so the colors. I would love the colors in each series to be the same. I like Pro Ultimates to all be the same color, Pro Controls to all be the same color, Pro Powers all be the same color. So we'll see. But the Pro Ultimate Elongated, here's the main difference that you need to know between this one and the Power. There is a tone down in power. There's a tone down in the break-in. Even after the break-in occurs, there's a tone down in power for sure. So I do think that if you were looking for a direct pro power elongated PPE replacement. This would not be it in terms of power. But I will say what was interesting about this one is that whereas before, where it felt like the Pro Power Elongated was really solid up at the top and needed a lot more stability and a lot more forgiveness down in the bottom corners, I weighted mine from the throat up to probably halfway up the sides on the Pro Power Elongated. On the Pro Ultimate Elongated Power, it's the opposite. It really feels like the paddle is super reinforced down here, and then up here, especially when you're attempting resets off the ground, it was really bad in the beginning. It was really, really bad. It just complete mishit almost every single time. Ball would fall dead. The swing weight is still really high, as is the balance point. Swing weight, or not super high, but stock it's at 124. So it felt tough to put extra weight up here on the upper part when the swing weight and balance point were already high. So it was something that I looked upon unfavorably for sure. I think as the paddle is broken in, the sweet spot becomes a little bit more consistent. I would say there are still a little bit more dead spots in sort of the upper little area here than there are down here in the throat area where we were experiencing it before. But I do think it's a lot more feasible to use this paddle and actually add weight to the top and just leave it at that. You can add less weight as the paddle breaks in more and more. It does have a more linear break in, something that is a lot more slow than the other paddle, even than the Pro Ultimate Elongated. Just the regular one, not the power version, the one that's teal colored. But yeah, I wasn't a fan of the Pro Power Elongated to begin with. So I am not necessarily super high on this paddle personally. But I do think that in terms of, familiarity and feel, this is a great replacement for the Pro Power Elongated. It's just not going to be the same level of power, and you're not going to experience that same level of power right off the bat. It is going to take time to break this in. So very similar to the Hyper, where we first saw a GEARBOX employ this, which again is to pass USAP's standards or rather UPA standards, where paddles should not break in to benefit to an exponential extent. So they are looking to create a paddle that is much more linear in terms of the break-in, so that it doesn't just go crazy and go out of spec at a random point. So they've achieved that fantastically. I think that more companies should probably be doing this. I think it is, kind of unfair that other companies are, still in the business of putting out paddles that just break in to an insane degree randomly, versus this one, what you're going to be playing with. That's just going to get a little bit better as time goes on. But regardless, I think the Pro Ultimate Elongated, just the original teal version, even though it is a little bit heavier and is a thicker core, probably is a little bit less powerful than this one, but is in the similar arena. Because of the sweet spot forgiveness that is sort of default on that paddle, I generally would recommend it over this one. But I still am probably going to spend some more time on this to see what the break-in looks like at its sort of full potential, and then we will maybe see a review on that. But what I will definitely do a review on sooner rather than later is the GX2, also from GEARBOX. So the GX2, just to remind y'all, I'm going to put these down in a moment just for ease of use, but it does come in this elongated shape, as well as the Integra shape, which is my personal favorite from the GEARBOX lineup, as well as the Hyper shape. I haven't spent a lot of time on the Hyper, so my preference for the Integra might change over time, but this is the GX2. Here's the lowdown on this one. So this is essentially a lot of the same ribbed core technology that GEARBOX was employing in the Pro series, except they're now putting it in a paddle that is more familiar. I mean, this looks like what you would expect a pickleball paddle to look like at the Pro level. Has the edge guard, of course. The face is, it's got this 3K carbon fiber face. So, where this paddle gets most of its spin from is from the dwell. It's not from grit. So I think that is always good, because considering that there's, grit levels on the USAP side, it's good to just be safe there. From my understanding, this paddle is USAP approved, and not sure if it's I don't believe it's UPA approved. Whether it will be in the future, I don't know. But for sure, at the moment, it is USAP approved, I believe only. The thing with this paddle is this, and when I first hit it, I was a fan because it felt like this feels like a Gen 2, but like tricked out with springs. Like, it's a hard feeling to describe, but it really feels like you took like a Gen 2 paddle and it has the same sort of construction and feel, even though it actually doesn't. Like, if you were just hand it to me and guess, it would feel like, I don't know, what I'm imagining is like the carbon fiber, like a carbon fiber hexagonal shaped core, like cells and everything like we have with polypropylene, but made out of the carbon fiber so that it's more flexible and actually shoots off the face. I may be giving companies ideas at this point. Just kidding. I don't even know if that's feasible. Or it's probably feasible. It probably costs a lot of money. But they've employed the rib core into this GX2, and the feel that I got is exactly what they were going for. Something that is familiar, but is more powerful and feels like a Gen 2 that's been tricked out. I will say, though, there is one qualm that I have with this paddle, and that is that the feeling just off the first couple of play sessions is extremely muted. Not only is the power non-linear, so that when you strike the ball differently at different spots on the paddle, the ball will either rocket off or it will actually translate to what you're feeling. Typically, it's in the sweet spot where if you hit it with a certain level of power that you're expecting, it will probably go a lot faster than that. There aren't many paddles like this where I have really felt that right off the bat, but this is definitely one of those. So it's a little difficult to gauge on the power because it is such a muted feel. Now, I haven't had a chance to talk with Raphael about the foam construction, how it differs in this paddle versus in the pro paddles, et cetera, and what's really contributing to that extra vibration dampening. I think if you have tennis elbow issues, there is probably going to be no better paddle on the market to recommend than this one. I have never, even with the true foams, never felt a ball feel that is this muted and felt this sort of few vibrations translating from my hand to my hand down to my elbow, etc. But it just feels almost muted to a fault is what I'm worried about. Now, I do know the GX2 is meant to break in linearly as well, and I will say I have not put as many hours on this paddle as I want to. This releases soon. I believe the release is April 7th. The Pro Ultimate Elongated is already out. But the GX2 is coming soon, and this one really intrigues me. I think that if I do come to enjoy this paddle a little bit more, then we'll probably do a giveaway for you guys, and I'll organize that. But for the time being, it is tough to recommend to advanced players that really want their ball striking to translate to how much power they're giving the ball, for them to sort of predict easily where the ball is going to go after you strike it. If you're transitioning from any other paddle that isn't like a pure foam Gen 4, like a True Foam or a 008 to this paddle, it's going to feel very, very different, and it's going to take time to adjust to the nonlinear power scale. So yeah, I'm going to play with this more. I'm going to see what it feels like after break-in. Maybe the feel gets a little bit better, a little bit less muted, and that would be very welcome. So we'll see what these end up feeling like at the end. And the last paddle for today is I'm revisiting the J2K Plus. This is another paddle that I'm considering switching to as my main over the Olympus, again, just because the main reason I switched to the Olympus, to give a long-winded explanation to it. For those of you that follow Speak Pickleball on Instagram, he does a graphic every month of what paddles that paddle reviewers are maining these days. Before I was using the Rhombus Ripple R2. And my Ripple went out of spec. So what I looked for next was a really solid power paddle that had a super high power to hand speed ratio. Something with a lot of power and very fast hand speed, so I should say high power to swing weight ratio. My Olympus comes in at a swing weight of 109 and is of course a powerful paddle. So that is the main reason that I switched to it. It felt a little bit similar, but not as stable as the R2, and that ultimately did do me in a little bit. I did have to add a little bit more weight to the top of the Olympus in order to really get the best benefit out of it. And it's still a fantastic paddle. I still love it, but I think personally for me in a tournament scenario, I need a paddle that is a little bit more forgiving and a little paddle that I can potentially make some more mistakes with, with the level that I'm currently at, and then just recover from them. And the Olympus is not a great paddle for me to do that. It's very offensive, meant for the confident player. So it's still a fantastic paddle. I just realized just personally after playing in a tournament with higher stakes that it may not suit my personality as it currently stands. So maybe it's one to revisit in the future as my confidence increases. But the J2K Plus is a different story. Now that mine is broken in, definitely plays a lot better, a lot more powerful than it did stock. Now I don't know if that means that this is going to, break soon or not, as we've sort of unveiled with all the communication about the J2K Plus. But as it currently stands now, the paddle is a lot more forgiving. It is a lot more, definitely feels a bit tighter than the 11624. I know they both employ floating cores, but this one is a little bit tighter still. But the sweet spot feels a lot more forgiving. You really feel more plushness. Again, plushness, not trampoline. You feel a lot of plush dwell into the paddle face. I would also say the J2K Plus and the J2TI Plus both have significantly more grit than their predecessors in the J2K and J2TI. So the added grit, the added forgiveness of the sweet spot, the added power, or rather, I wouldn't say added forgiveness of the sweet spot. I would put J2K Plus and J2K on similar large sweet spot scales. But in terms of higher power and higher grit, so more spin, they do have a little bit of a higher swing weight, I would say, and that's probably because the foam that has been used in these is of higher density than what was used in the J2K, or rather, maybe there's even more foam. Not maybe. There is more foam in these than the J2K, which is always going to bring the swing weight and the twist weight up. So this could be a very solid doubles paddle for somebody that is looking for just a tweak up in higher power, but still really liked the J2K. I think that I'm going to end up coming around on this paddle. And I think I talked a lot of criticism about stating that this paddle is only going to last a few months previously. What I think I've come to, where I think I've sort of come to grips with mentally, is that the J2K probably has similar durability, as does the vast majority of Gen 2s, and some Gen 3s have even worse durability than this. I mean, people have been core crushing, major company brand Gen 3 paddles very quickly, as you could probably do with this one as well. I'm not going to say that this is more durable than those in any way, but I will say that I don't think it's any less durable than anything else that's on the market. And I think it was simply an effort by Honolulu Pickleball to be more transparent with the durability of their paddles. Some companies simply have the resources to make more durable paddles and others don't. Now, whether or not that is a good thing or a bad thing, I still haven't thought about that, to be honest. But at least when you buy this paddle, which I think is in the 160s in terms of price, you know what you're getting into. You know that this paddle, if you play frequently, is probably not going to last more than a few months. So as long as you know that before going in and buying the paddle, then these are the types of mistakes that I make when I talk during regular reviews that I cut out, but I'm not cutting that out for you guys. This, as you know what you're going into when you get this paddle. And I think that it's a paddle that is very enjoyable when it does break in. Now, I guess, ultimately depends on whether you're comfortable replacing this paddle roughly 3 to 4 times a year. So some people are, especially when it comes between this and paying twice as much for perceived higher durability, and others may not be. So that is all in your hands. All right. But with all of that said, my favorite catchphrase, that is going to wrap up this week in Pickleball episode 5. If you guys made it here to the end, thank you so much for watching and for your support. Make sure you like, subscribe, of course, comment down below, comments about anything that we discussed today. Let me know what you thought about the paddles we discussed, what you thought about the Texas Open. Of course, answer my question for the audience, please. That's probably the biggest action item. But yeah, keeping all of that in mind, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your evening. And of course, I hope you all stay happy and healthy. And of course, out on the courts. Until the next video. Peace.